Coast to coast yesterday, Canadians voiced their anger at Liberal government's decision to abandon their campaign promise on electoral reform. Up until late 2016, it was definitive. This would be the last first-past-the-post election, and from now on, Canada would have some sort of proportional representation in this country. And since the government came to the conclusion that it would break this promise, a variety of reasons have been presented to Canadians as to why they will not. We are back with round 3 of the Sunday Scrum. Susan Riley and John Ibbitson are in Ottawa. Rob Breckenridge joins me from Calgary. Rob, what do you make of the government's reasons for breaking this promise?
I've really never seen anything like it. I mean, politicians breaking promises, that's nothing new. But to have a politician now argue that it would be irresponsible, damaging to the country to do that thing they promised to do in the first place, I mean, it's highly illogical at several levels. Why did they promise it in the first place? The notion that, well, we need to make every vote count, but now, there's certain votes we don't want to be counted, and therefore we can't do this. So it's very odd, but I mean, it speaks to the problem Trudeau foresees, maybe doesn't have just yet, because on a number of issues, and I mean, this one in particular, there's a lot for a new leader of an NDP to grab onto and really make an issue of. So he's trying to reassure these progressive voters that he was reaching out to in the first place when he made the promise that, look, here's why we can't do this, and it would be really irresponsible to do this, but it's obviously people aren't buying it.
Let me remind our audience what the Prime Minister had to say when he explained Friday at a town hall in Yellowknife his decision to drop the promise of electoral reform. I'll set it up by saying this. Trudeau is saying national unity outranks a broken promise. Take a listen.
As strongly and as passionately as I believe that we could move forward on improving our electoral system, and as much as I understand what you say about cynicism, where someone keeping a promise, saying they're going to keep a promise and then not being able to keep that promise, I recognize a higher responsibility even than that. And that is the responsibility every Canadian Prime Minister has to keep this country together and united.
John, what do you make of that?
Yeah, sure. Look, 3 things. First of all, if at the end of, let's say, the second year, in their sort of halfway summation, Justin Trudeau's advisors say to him, well, the worst thing that's happened to us is that we broke our promise on electoral reform, they'll have had a good first 2 years. Secondly, there is a small coterie of Canadians who care passionately about this. And by the way, they're some of the least humorous people I've ever met. But outside of that group...
Care to name names?
But outside of that group, I don't think this has a tremendous resonance. But third, and to go to Rob's point, Justin Trudeau is opening up a surprising amount of room on his left flank. He has approved all those pipelines and the Site C Dam in British Columbia, which environmentalists detest. He has also, speaking of environmentalists, set very, very weak, in fact, they're Stephen Harper level, targets for reducing global warming. And now third, he's broken his promise on electoral reform. And as we mentioned last week, and as Gloria Galloway and I wrote about in the Globe this weekend, that lackluster NDP leadership race that nobody's paying any attention to, well, they're starting to pay attention to it now because there's this very charismatic, urban, young NDP Ontario MPP, Jagmeet Singh, who's being pushed to run for the leadership of the party. You put all of those things together, you add Mr. Singh to the mix, and it starts to get worrying for the Liberals on their left.
What do you think, Rob?
Well, yeah, I mean, John's right. I think we haven't paid a lot of attention to the NDP as of late, and it didn't really seem as though there was going to be any excitement around that leadership campaign. But that could change that. And, and the relationship with Donald Trump and whether or not Justin Trudeau is going to stand up to Donald Trump enough, that's also going to play into all of this. So the way that Justin Trudeau is trying to give excuses for his climb down electoral reform is very much meant to reach out to that segment of the voting population, because Conservatives are in a weird spot because, yeah, sure, they want to point out the fact that Justin Trudeau broke a promise, but obviously they didn't see the need to change the electoral process in the first place. So it's not as though Conservative voters are feeling betrayed or angry by that promise. So Justin Trudeau knows full well who he needs to aim his message at.
Susan, what about the fact that this is going to keep the country together, that a wedge party led by somebody like Kelly Leitch could make its way in, populist parties like we've seen all over Europe in proportional representations, forms of government have made their way in, and he's just trying to protect the country from breaking up?
That's totally bogus. First of all, it's the first past the post system that produced Kelly Leitch and Brad Trost, another candidate with quite I would describe as extreme views, or at least offside views, another Conservative leadership candidate. So I don't buy that at all. The only way a party led by Kelly Leitch would gain any foothold at all would be if enough Canadians actually agreed. And wasn't that supposed to be what PR and opening up our system was all about, to have broader representation? The real beneficiary, the real beneficiary of PR, I think, in our current system would be the Green Party. They would probably, and I don't think most Canadians, even if they don't vote Green, would consider that in any way threatening to our democracy. In fact, a lot of people would applaud it. Bogus arguments. And I disagree with John. I agree that this is not necessarily a top-of-mind issue for a lot of Canadians. But Justin Trudeau's self-interested betrayal was a real step back from the image that he's been cultivating so carefully. It makes a mockery of his notion of consultation, too. You know, he was kind of hands-off, giving it to a parliamentary committee, canvassing Canadians. When they didn't come back, neither the committee nor Canadians, with the answer that he wanted, he just pulled the plug on the whole thing. So I think it was a turning point for a lot of voters, especially progressive left voters, and I don't think it's going to be easily repaired.
All right, well, we have to leave it on that note. I want to thank all of you today, freelance columnist Susan Riley, John Ibbotson of the Globe and Mail, and Rob Breckenridge of News Talk 770 in Calgary. Have a great week, everyone.
Hey, bye, Carol.
Thank you, Carol.
Bye. At any time, if you want to join the conversation, tweet me at Carol McNeil. How do you think the Prime Minister should deal with Donald Trump? And do you forgive Justin Trudeau for breaking his promise on electoral reform? Hashtag Sunday Scrum. And remember, you can catch up with the Sunday Scrum online. Simply head to CBCNews.ca.